What's up, guys? Alexander here with Date Psychology. So, I'm going to share with you today a study on dating apps. A couple of sex differences, preferences for physical attractiveness and preferences for level of education. Pretty straightforward study, but I thought it was interesting, got some interest, so kind of wanted to go over it with you guys. Sex differences, education, attractiveness, dating apps. Let's see what we got here. This is the paper that we're looking at. Brains or Beauty, Causal Evidence on the Returns to Education and Attractiveness in the Online Dating Market. So it says it's causal, so we know right off that it's probably experimental methodology, right? You are varying something and seeing an effect. And the effect in this case, what are the variables we're looking at? Physical attractiveness, right? And level of education for men and for women in online dating profiles. Quick run through of the methods here. They used what they said was the largest dating website in the Netherlands. They did not name what that was. It is probably Tinder. Sometimes in these research papers, they'll say, when looking at dating apps, they'll say, we use the largest dating app or whatever in an area. I don't know why they don't always name it. Maybe some proprietary thing, but it's probably Tinder, or maybe if one of you guys is watching and you're from the Netherlands, and it is some other app, leave a comment. Let me know what it could be instead. Maybe it's Hinge or whatever the case may be. They used fictitious profiles, right? So they created 3 profiles, 3 for men, or excuse me, 6 total, 3 for men, 3 for women. And they varied these by education level, university, high school, and not listed. And they varied them by attractiveness. So you had a high attractiveness profile, medium, and low. So the photos that they used in the profiles were pre-rated ahead of time by a sample. I believe their pre-raters was a pretty large group of pre-raters, so probably decent. It was about 70 to 100 people for men and women rating opposite sex photographs. So we have these photographs pre-rated, so we know, where there's some consensus on a high level of attractiveness, low, whatever. And those are being used for these profiles, creating them, uploading them to the dating app. This was looking for long-term relationship context. I believe they said in the methods that they put in the biography that they were looking for long-term relationships. So keeping that in mind going forward, let's look right at the results here. Here's the reply rate. So we're not looking at the match rate, right? And that's something I think is good, because I think match rates, which a lot of people have focused on, especially in like Tinder statistics, like who's getting more matches, who's getting less matches, they can be pretty misleading, because we know that men use a serial swiping strategy. They swipe on everyone, right? That doesn't mean that men message everyone. And women don't swipe on very many, but may message or respond to messages at a higher percentage in that case. And additionally, you have bots, you have things like that you will match with that are not real people. But if you get a reply, right, better chance that it's an actual human being on the line. So this is the chart for attractiveness, the pre-ratings of attractiveness. Low, medium, high, low, medium, high. And we have female profiles, male responses, male profiles, female responses. And we see a pretty good sized effect here, don't we? That it's graded, right? The steepness is very similar for men and women. Of course, female profiles get significantly more responses to their matches. And we see an effect for both men and women, where the lowest in physical attractiveness receive fewer responses. And what more can be said about that? Let's go to the next one. This is the effect of education. Female profiles, male profiles, high school, university. And they took out their no education listed condition. I'm not sure why they did that. Maybe because this was where you would see a significant difference. Perhaps the other wasn't, so they didn't include it in the chart. What do we see with the female profiles here, first off? High school listed got more matches. So we see a main effect here. And what's that main effect? It is that having a university degree listed in your profile as a woman results in fewer responses, not matches, but responses. And what do we see for men? No effect at all, right? In fact, almost identical, the response rate for men, high school education and university. So in this paper, this experiment in the Netherlands, they did not find an effect of university or education for men. Now, past research has, so that's something to keep in mind, that there has actually been a lot of past research that says, okay, men that list a university degree in their profile, as well as things like higher income, a bunch of different things, do result in more matches. But in this one, no effect. So attractiveness is basically what we're looking at here. Some more notable results from this. 20% of men would reply to the low attractiveness female profiles, okay? So even the unattractive woman is getting about a 20% response rate, right? Reply rate to all of their matches in that case. We have, on the other hand, only 4% of women reply to the lowest in attractiveness for male profiles. So a very small response rate, but maybe higher than you would expect if you were expecting 0, right? Right off the bat, maybe this is even a good result, but probably not, right? 4%, 20%. So we see a big sex difference here, right? Women get more attention on Tinder. What can be said? Something that we have already known for a very, very long time. And as I mentioned, the rate of response is equally steep by attractiveness. So it's not the case that an unattractive woman does as well on dating apps as a very attractive woman. No, we don't see that. We do see a difference, that attractiveness matters for men and for women. And it matters as far as magnitude, as far as the steepness of the ratio goes, about the same, right? But when you count actual matches, when you count response rates, I should say, not matches, but response rates, yeah, we do see a big sex difference, right? It's easier for women on dating apps. You know, this is known. What else? High attractiveness photos, okay? They were 20 percentage points more likely to receive results. And they're using percentage points here. So it's important to kind of clarify what that translates into something more intuitive, okay? And that means that this response rate increase is about 200 to 600% higher for the highest attractive profiles. So you do see a pretty big boost there, right? For attractive individuals on dating apps. Again, not a huge surprise to anyone who has ever read anything about a dating app ever. We know the 2 rules for dating apps, right? Be attractive, don't be unattractive, okay? What else here? Men are 5.1 percentage points less likely to respond to the higher educated female profiles. So kind of like we saw in the second chart, having a university degree or something like that listed in a female Tinder profile may result in fewer responses. Might be kind of a net negative, maybe a little bit of a black pill for women in that case, right? Like, oh, you know, they don't appreciate your degree, but not only that, it could even be looked at poorly, right? It could hinder your opportunities. So not a good thing for the girls. What else do we see here? Female university graduates. This is important because, you know, they began to look at the specific demographics and who likes who, what's going on there. Women that had a university degree had a much stronger preference for men that had a university degree. So we saw a main effect, right, at the beginning. And the main effect was that, well, basically that there was no effect for university degrees for men, right? That the high school men and the men with a university degree, same amount of matches as a main effect. But here we see that when we look at specific subgroups, we do see a difference, right? That women who have some level of education prefer men who have more. And I think this is pretty consistent with what we know in evolutionary psychology, that women do tend to prefer men who are higher in status, some kind of status symbol or signal, right? They select across and up. And so that's what we're seeing here. If a woman starts out at higher status herself, she's going to want a man who's higher in status. And one of the best signals of status in Western society is simply having a degree, right? David Buss did a very large cross-cultural survey on status cues for men and women, and the top, for men in particular, the top 10 were 2 related to university. One was attended a prestigious university. The other was simply has a university degree. So we know simply that having that piece of paper is actually a big status symbol, at least for men, probably for women, but perhaps not in a online dating context, something that enhances the attractiveness of a female profile. Male university graduates, on the other hand, and this might surprise you a little bit, they preferred female profiles with a lower level of education. So we didn't even see a assortative or homophilic preference in this case for educated women. Even men who had a higher level of education themselves actually selected down. They showed a preference for downward selection, which is interesting because we talk about assortative mating, that sort of thing. And there's two concepts here that kind of go together, right? Assortative mating. People select partners who are similar to them, and we do see assortative mating for education level, for status, for socioeconomic status, for class, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that assortative mating emerges due to an explicit preference, right? Homophily, the idea that you like what is similar. It could be that people are sorted into similarity by proximity, right? If you have a university degree, if you are in the university, perhaps your dating pool is made up of individuals who are as well, so you select from them, but it might not be an explicit preference, right? It might not be something that you were specifically looking for. So when looking kind of at preferences, expressed preferences in this case, what do we see? That even men who had a higher level of education preferred women with a lower level of education. Let's go forward. I mentioned homophily, right? So these are different preferences models, right? How do people express preferences and how do they work? So homophilic, right? Similar partners. Like attracts like. And the idea is not simply that it is passively assortative, but that like attracts like because people who are similar actually like that in other partners. And there's evidence for all of these models, and they're probably expressed differently, right? So if you are a goth, an emo, whatever the case may be, good chance in that case that maybe you actually do have a liking for someone who's into like your hobbies and your styles, right? But in some cases you don't see that explicit preference or like for something like that. In that case, you might see assortion, but not due to homophily, right? What else do we see in this case? We see the universal preferences, okay? So what are universal preferences in this case? Something that everyone pretty much likes across the board. And what is an example of that? Facial attractiveness, right? Physical attractiveness is one. And something that you see cross-culturally, similar preferences, whatever. Everyone pretty much likes someone who is attractive. And they do it even if they're not attractive themselves, right? On dating apps especially, you see a really strong preference for individuals higher in attractiveness, pretty much regardless of the dating app user's own attractiveness. Everyone is kind of trying to select up in that sense. And men too, there's a lot of discourse on like men will, swipe on all the profiles, true, and that men will date way down a little bit more, but we do still see the strong preference. You see it in the results here, the very first chart, right? Responses much higher for the attractive women. And what's the other one? The traditional model. Okay, so given the traditional model, it's essentially traditional gender roles, expectations and that sort of thing. And I say traditional gender roles, but something else you could kind of incorporate into that could be evolved preferences. And why do I say that? So we're talking about in traditional gender roles, the man should have status in the household. He should be the breadwinner, perhaps a domestic role for the woman, okay? So it's kind of a preference for that. Some people show stronger preferences for traditional gender roles than others do. And of the results here, which are kind of supported? Well, the homophilic model, not as much. The other two, yes. And why is that? Universal preferences, physical attractiveness. Okay, so we got that out of the way. There are universal preferences that people select for, and that is one. Traditional roles as well. Why? Women who were educated preferred a man who was more educated, right? Which could signal, that selection up in status. And in the main effect, that actually wasn't the case, but the authors said, support for that. Okay. And the other would be kind of the traditional gender roles, right? The desire for a man up, and also, importantly, that men showed a desire downward. And why could something like that be? Why traditional? Let's look at the slide here. I'll go on to the next one. There may be kind of a domestic labor versus in a workplace kind of labor trade-off, right? If you are married to a woman, dating a woman, and she's a career woman, and you want someone who's kind of domestic, right? Or you want someone that's going to stay at home all of the time, or someone that's going to raise a family, those two things can conflict, right? And that's a life history decision that a lot of people, men and women both, kind of struggle with, and women more. It's kind of like, do I pursue a career and postpone family creation, right? And we're seeing kind of, the so-called fertility crisis at the moment, that birth rates have dropped way down, in part because that's kind of what people are doing. If they are having families, they're having them much later. Smaller families on average as well. Why? Because financially it's difficult for many people. Even if they are high earners, it can impact their life as far as their career choices and the things that they want to do. What's also related to this traditional model? It could be related to a male desire for status, and we're talking about the male desire here to prefer women with lower education, right? If your model of a relationship, a domestic relationship, a romantic relationship, is that you should be higher in status than the woman, but the woman is basically equal to you in status, she has a similar income, similar level of education or something like that, that could be kind of threatening to your mental model of the way that the relationship should look and work. And in that case, it can also be kind of ego preserving, right? To be a little bit higher than status for some men that are kind of oriented that way. And complementing this, the female desire for higher status, right, in a male partner. That's also kind of a traditional thing as well. Possibly, probably evolutionary basis for why that has emerged. But we have these two different forces, men who are more traditionally oriented might want someone who's more domestic, and they might want someone, that's not as career oriented in that sense. And at the same time, women in general show a preference for men who are higher in status than they are. And a third one, and they didn't mention this in the paper, but I think it's a potentially good explanation as well. It could be due to stereotypes associated with educated women. And what are those? For example, okay, probably, that she's less agreeable in a sense. That's kind of associated with career women. And we do see, a small relationship between agreeableness and college attendance, so that might not actually be entirely accurate, but that is a common perception. Like, okay, this is going to be a boss babe, right? And some guys are going to say, I don't want a boss babe, I want like a feminine, traditional woman at home. What else would be one there? We have in popular culture as well now an association with women in the universities being highly feminist, right? And so for some men, maybe that's a good thing and a plus. But for others, perhaps it's not. And you have the whole caricature there, right? The blue-haired with a bunch of piercings, and she's very woke and all of that. And so in a way, given the association with the university and education at this point, even having a degree could kind of signal being on a political team or an ideological team that is not something that the man wants to associate with. So I think that's a potentially good explanation there, but the authors didn't mention, but I wanted to add it there. So let's go on to the very last slide. And what are the main takeaways from this? We're gonna do a short video today. This is the last one. Who's gonna struggle on apps? Well, we already know, right? The two rules of the apps. Be attractive, don't be unattractive. So men who are low in attractiveness, they're gonna struggle the most. And women who are low in attractiveness are going to struggle more than women who are high in attractiveness, right? So attractiveness is what it comes down to in the results of this paper, and pretty, consistently across research on dating apps. Even when other variables do matter, like education, attractiveness still tends to emerge with an effect size that is much larger. So apps, yeah, very superficial. They're based on a picture, right? You're simply looking at a picture. So whatever, of course, they're going to prioritize physical appearance a great deal. Who else is going to struggle? Highly educated women. Net negative for women, at least in these results. Who else will struggle in that case? Less educated men. And why is that? We saw in the main effect, as I mentioned, there was no difference between men who were low in education and high, right? High school, university. But then when we began to look at specific groups within this, educated women, they do prefer men who are more educated, which is going to reduce the potential pool for men who are not. So you do see some interactions here, right? And those emerge. And what are those, right? Men who are low in education and low in attractiveness, yeah, that's a big blow. They're going to struggle the most. And women who are high in education and low in attractiveness, for women, they're going to struggle the most as well. So enjoy pretty black pilling video, maybe moderately black pilling. I hope you guys liked it. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. I will make another video for you very soon.